Welcome back, everyone, to Radiant Resilience. I am so excited to share this information with you today and have this conversation. I have with me today Christine Ruch. She is a holistic transformation guide who helps women with multiple sclerosis reconnect to their body's innate wisdom and healing potential. After spending 20 years healing her own MS naturally through whole food nutrition, nervous system restoration, spiritual practice, plant medicine, deep self inquiry, and many other Eastern and Western modalities, Christine now guides others on their own transformative healing path. Her work bridges science and soul, offering tools to move beyond symptom management and into lasting inner healing. She's here to share insight, hope, and grounded practices for listeners ready to reclaim their health from the inside out. I love that bio. Thank you so much, Christine, for being here.
Thank you for inviting me on your show.
Yeah, so I would love to hear your story and your journey with MS if you want to share that to start with my listeners. And I'm going to let you start wherever you feel like is a good place for that.
Sure. Yeah, I was diagnosed with MS in 2006. I was 38 years old. I had two young kids, and they were like 3 and 5. And so it was a big deal, as it always is, to be diagnosed with a health condition like that. And yeah, I just started the healing path. And I actually never ended up pursuing pharmaceutical intervention
Okay.
or because I don't know, I had a naturopath at the time and she invited me to do like a food elimination diet. And I was pretty sick. Obviously, that type of diagnosis, what precipitates it is you're not really feeling the best. And so I've always had an aversion, like bodily aversion to pharmaceutical medicines and like lots of side effects and difficulties processing them. And so I was really nervous about taking a pharmaceutical drug. At that time, they were injections that you had to give yourself. And I think there still is a range of those type of treatments as well in today. But having said that, I thought I'll just do this diet cleanse thing, even though I was on the natural path, so to speak, but that was 20 years ago. It looked a lot different than it does today.
Yeah, for sure.
And so I just thought I need to be healthier to be able to withstand the medicine. So I did that first as a way to just boost my health. And then actually, it turned out to be so transformative and so jaw droppingly shocking to me. It really reversed like all of my symptoms
Mm.
and it was so profound. And so I never felt like, it, yeah, reversed all of my symptoms. And so I never felt like I needed to continue to like pivot and go to pharmaceutical intervention. I just thought this has been so powerful. I'm going to keep walking down this road and see what else there is to offer in the natural healing path.
Mhm.
And then through that process, then I've just had 20 years of exploring and working with mentors and healers and different physicians, alternative care physicians, doing, as you said in my bio, all kinds of different
Yeah.
modalities of treatment. And then I went on to get a degree in holistic nutrition. And then I opened a natural food business. I opened a restaurant and I had three food businesses, had a
Wow.
restaurant and two other food businesses, and then a variety of food brands in Boulder, Colorado for about a decade. And they were incredibly successful. And I feel really blessed that I was able to have that chapter of my life. Except then it just stopped working for me. It just
Mm.
stopped serving me. And for sure, it was like the stress of the pandemic and all of the things that happened to food businesses during that process definitely exacerbated everything. And so, through a series of events, I ended up closing everything quite suddenly and shifted my life quite dramatically. And in the last 3 years, I've been working pretty intensively on a whole nother layer of healing that I feel like I would love to share more about today. And that is something that I know is relevant, not just for MS, but any autoimmune disease, but also all illnesses.
Mm.
And that is all about nervous system, working at the nervous system level and trauma level and the body wisdom level, and also aligning your mind and your body and your spirit, and how when you're in alignment and full truth and create a relationship with your nervous system, then amazingly, like the natural healing process just unfolds really organically and without really actually trying, to be honest with you, to go and chase after all these data points and these things that we're accustomed to doing in mainstream and or even alternative care. We generally address it in the same linear fashion. And actually, I think that we're supposed to heal totally differently.
Interesting. So, can you,
Yeah.
because MS is a nervous system disease, right? So, can you explain what
Yep.
MS is for anybody who might not know for some reason, but go into detail on that real quick?
Sure. It's an autoimmune disease that affects the nervous system. It affects primarily your brain and your spinal cord, and it leads to a variety of different symptoms that are like difficult to diagnose because they're fleeting and they change all the time. In a lot of conditions, you have the same reoccurring symptom over and over. That makes it obviously simpler to diagnose. But with MS, you can have numbness, tingling, blindness, weakness, joint pain, incontinence, sleeping problems. Like it just goes all over
Mm.
the gamut. And every time you have a symptom, it could go one time, it could be a frozen neck. And the next time, it could be optic neuritis. And the next time, it could be your legs, you lose mobility and ability to walk. And the next time, it could be your hands and you're dropping things all the time and don't have any grip strength. Any number of these neurological symptoms will manifest in the course of the disease. And ultimately, left unchecked, it will lead to debilitation, blindness, and being in a wheelchair.
Oh my gosh. So, how do they diagnose it then? If it's that all over the place, that's got to be difficult.
What they do actually, it's not actually, I think that it's simpler to diagnose now. While the symptoms and the doctor might have a difficult time getting you to the point of being diagnosed, once you're in the care of a neurologist, it's pretty straightforward. You just
Okay.
have an MRI, and then the MRI will show lesions because multiple sclerosis means multiple scars.
Oh.
And the lesions are areas in your brain and your spinal cord where you have demyelination, and the demyelination is the myelin sheath, which is what surrounds your nerve cells and your nerve endings in your spine and your brain, then begin to deteriorate. And that's the thing that leads to these motor symptoms. And so you can see the demyelination in the MRI. And so then it's pretty straightforward for that to be a diagnosis.
Okay. And it's something that progressed, like it usually just keeps progressing, right? Whether slow or fast. And I feel when I was like a kid and I would hear people talk about MS, it was a pretty awful diagnosis back then because there wasn't much to do for it, right?
Yeah, exactly. I think traditional mainstream pharmaceutical intervention only came online, I don't know, maybe about 30 years ago.
Okay. Mhm.
And although there is a long track record, it's not so well known, of course, of people who have cured themselves. And it's actually reversible. A
Oh.
lot of times people are afraid that if you lose your eyesight or you lose your mobility, that then that means it's like a permanent affliction. And it's actually not at all. There's definitely people who've been recorded to have regained their eyesight and
Hmm.
regained full. I mean, and there's definitely Terry Walls is a perfect example, modern day example. She's a physician who has MS, and she was practicing medicine in a recumbent wheelchair. And then she did all the pharmaceutical work, and because she's a doctor, and she realized she was getting worse and worse to such a degree she was living in a recumbent wheelchair
Mm.
and still practicing medicine, by the way, which is super silly. Not silly, it's amazing, and it's a huge
Yeah.
testament to the human spirit, but it's shocking that she was able to do that. But then she started changing her diet, and then she rides bikes and she strides about the stage giving TED Talks, and she's a crazy, she's an amazing woman. So it just shows you the power of medicine, the power of the food, and there's a lot of other pieces to the healing puzzle, but yeah, food is an important part of it.
That's so interesting. So when you got diagnosed, then did you do a deep dive into research or did you just, because you said you were already working with a holistic doctor, so did it sounded like you were gonna go for the pharmaceuticals eventually, was your plan, right?
For sure,
From the beginning.
because especially 20 years ago, I don't know, even probably still today, I think there's this huge disconnect. You don't really think that healing an autoimmune disease is within the realm of something that is possible. And 20 years ago, especially, it seemed ridiculous. And it also felt silly that like changing your diet would change your mobility. And that was, I definitely had to do a deep dive and that's when I learned I had quite the researcher brain, was then to recognize how what you eat can affect all kinds of things. And yeah, that was, I didn't think I would ever be doing something so crazy as like I was going to be on a special diet to treat MS. My family thought I was nuts.
20 years
But
ago, 20, right? You said?
yeah, 20 years ago.
Yeah, that's what I feel like a lot. We were not accepting that our food was as toxic as it is now.
No, for sure. And yeah, I definitely had a lot of pushback from my family, my inner circle, and things like that. People thought it was absolutely nuts, but they also couldn't deny like the results. And so of me just changing my diet, and the food part was the cornerstone of what I did for a long time, because then I went on to
Yeah.
open my restaurants and things like that to inspire people around like how powerful food is and how central to our well-being it is. So that was where my focus was for a long time.
Now, obviously, every body is different. I'm
Mm.
sure this varies person to person, but what things like diet-wise worked the best for you?
Diet is very, you're right. Diet is very individual. I think that we thrive on a whole food diet and no artificial colors, flavors, like crap, none of that. And being mindful of organic food is really important, and glyphosate and those kind of things, or GMO. That's really important for you to have the purest food possible and the localist food possible. If you want to eat animal protein, you're making sure you're very cognizant and very aware of it being local, ethically sourced, and well raised. And likewise, if you choose to be a vegan or a vegetarian, you're very conscientious of glyphosate is rampant in mainstream grains and legumes. And so you're conscientious also of the ways in which our body most assimilates the nutrition from grains and legumes. And that's definitely something that has been lost in our modern day food processing, is that wisdom. But throughout time, that's the way all of our legumes and grains have been consumed, is through a process of fermentation or soaking and things like that. So if you're using, and like same thing, dairy, sugar, like all those things, just having the cleanest, purest whole food diet possible. But from there, having said that, everybody's tolerance and need for different diet is very individualized. What worked for me and what's worked for me for a long time isn't necessarily the same for everybody.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I was just curious what specific things like did end up working for you. So
You said did not end up working?
did. Yeah, did.
Yeah, I did. For the most part, for me, I am a protein type. Definitely am very sick. I have celiac disease too. So
Mhm.
I actually am sensitive to all grains except for corn, like rice, especially rice, quinoa, things like that. Like it's a no. So I ended up, my diet ends up looking more like a paleo diet, and it has
Okay.
been for about, I don't know, maybe about 16, 17
Okay.
years.
Yeah.
And but now I have a more full diet since I started doing this other work, and I
Okay.
have a fuller diet than I've had in since since I was diagnosed. So it goes to
Hmm.
show you that sometimes it's your nervous system and all of the constrictions and that you have in your life that keeps things so tight that
Hmm.
makes it hard to assimilate the nutrition from food, as an example.
Interesting.
Mhm.
Okay, let's talk about that.
Sure, let's talk about it.
What brought that to your attention, the nervous system work, like to want to dive deeper into that?
Yeah, that was like a little bit by accident. It wasn't really an intentional healing path of mine at all. It was, I closed all my businesses pretty traumatically, pretty suddenly, not in a way that I would recommend any entrepreneur do. But that's my own story, my own path. And then I went and I decided to spend some time honoring myself and my body and everything that had happened to me. And I went on a deep dive of my own healing, internal healing path, and I came to Costa Rica. And
Mhm.
then I started working with these two healers, and I started working with these two healers primarily as a means to integrate all of the changes that had come about in my life and really start to helped me figure out like how did I get here and what is
Mhm.
going on. And then through the container that they built in the process of their work with me and my immersion in this process, I started to experience shifts and changes to my health without even looking at my health. It wasn't even a thing. I never even went to them and said, "Oh, I have MS and I'd like to figure this out." I was never even, I don't even think I even told them I had MS.
Mm,
It was in such good control, like
mm,
generally speaking. And I also am not somebody who's ever overly identified with that diagnosis. I think that
mm.
sometimes, as an aside, I think that we get into trouble when we create an identity based on
Yeah.
the diagnosis that we have. And I think it's another rabbit hole we can go down. But that was never my identity, and it was never something I led with or even that I shared unless it was pertinent or relevant. But I started to notice all of these other things with my health changing without me actually even trying. And it wasn't even something that I wasn't even on my radar. It wasn't even something I was trying to do, but doing this other work to regulate my nervous system. Now that was clear that I needed to do that. My nervous system was shot. I was a complete wreck, but I had no idea that would impact that work of healing my nervous system would impact my state of health and the expression of my disease. So it was a really powerful experience.
Yeah, that's really cool. So if someone's listening that doesn't really know what you're talking about as far as your nervous system being blocked and whatever, how would you
Yeah.
describe that to somebody?
It's so powerful, but also if you really think about it for a minute, there's a lot, we live our life with a lot of constriction.
Yeah.
And we live our life with a lot of constriction, a lot of stress. And the stress creates tightness and creates constriction. And then also, we are not culturally, societally, we don't ever talk about how to modulate our nervous system, or not even that. How about just your emotional expression? We don't build emotional capacity, we don't build emotional resilience. In fact, we run from our emotions, we hide from our emotions. We say things like, "Oh, that triggers me. I don't feel safe." And like we expect other people to make us feel safe when in fact
Mm.
safety is built from within.
Mm.
And so it's this whole idea that we run from these things and these experiences that trigger us. And that's not how we're supposed to live as humans. We're here to express and experience the whole range of emotions. And we have the capacity to hold all of it. But
Mm.
we've never even recognized that is within our power to control and or appreciate even what happens when you start doing so.
Mm.
And what happens when you start to allow yourself to feel the
Mm.
full range of emotions that the human experience provides.
Which is
And
terrifying for some people.
it is terrifying, but look at that word terrifying. Is that a constricting word or is
Mm.
that an expansive word?
Not expansive by any means.
No, it's not. So
Yeah.
you're just building constriction upon constriction. Your nervous system is getting tighter and tighter and less permeable, less
Mm.
ability to like be free. It's
Yeah.
getting tighter and more wound up and more bound up. And so in that process, of course, you're going to have full expression of disease. And also, it doesn't even have to be multiple sclerosis, right? This could
Right.
look like high blood pressure. This could look like high blood sugar. This could
Yeah.
look like having a having an uneven temper. This could look like depression. This could look like all sorts of drama in your life that you
Mm.
invite in because you don't know how to regulate relationships and the emotional
Mm.
imbalances in relationships. This can look like so many different things. It doesn't just
Right.
have to be multiple sclerosis.
Right.
That's just one of a million different ways that our body expresses anger and discomfort around restriction and constriction and tightness in the nervous system.
For so long and for so many generations, like you weren't supposed to talk about your feelings. You weren't supposed to talk about hard stuff. And the
Yeah.
people who were really struggling were, it was like, no, if you see a therapist, you're a weirdo, like in my like grandparents'
Yeah.
days.
Yeah.
And I think it's gotten better, but I do think we also live in a crazier life than we ever have before as humans, and there's so many more stressors and overwhelm and things like that in the with the tech world we live in and all this stuff. There's so much going on at one time that it's easy to ignore all of it and suppress it or numb it or things like that. Yeah, I love this.
Yeah, it's really true. And I love what you just said, though, too, about generationally speaking,
Mhm.
right? You're talking about your grandparents, and then they had a certain paradigm around these sort of things. Like it's a shame thing. Like you don't talk about these family secrets. You don't talk about they're family secrets and they're full of shame, and you don't talk about it. And then they raised our parents.
Right.
And then our parents might have had a little bit more of an expansive understanding of these type of things, but they're also not in full expansion at
Mm.
all either. And then they raised us. And then how are we raising our children? I don't know if you have children, but I have two. And even though I like went to therapy when I was young and I had a mom who wanted me to figure out certain things, I thought I did. But I certainly didn't have any emotional regulation whatsoever.
Hmm.
And I didn't even know that was a term. I think I'm
Same.
a pretty even keeled person. I'm a pretty good natured person. I don't veer towards depression or anger. Although, to be honest with you, I did veer towards anger. But I veered towards anger because I didn't have any awareness or accessible. The range of emotions in the body wasn't accessible to me. I went from nothing to anger, and there's about 50 million gradations in between those two things. And I just that wasn't even available to me. I never learned that. I had no reference for that whatsoever. And so I think once I started to recognize these other layers of things, it shifted all of these other things in my life, like permanently, because
Mhm.
you can't unsee once you see things.
Yeah.
And you could try, but that only makes you sicker.
Yeah.
But once you see the hard thing, you realize, oh my gosh, wow, okay, I need to fix that.
I also think it's really nice to have the specific things brought to your attention. I like to use the analogy of if a car's broken, like you got to figure out what part of it is broken and what happened to it in order to fix it. So being aware of those things is easier to work through it because now you know, and now you know what to work towards.
Yeah, for sure. I agree with that completely, but I also think let's use your example of the car that's broken and the kind mechanic who tells you all the things that's got to happen to your car. Then, building on that analogy, if you're the poor college student and you're in denial because you're busy trying to figure out, like, what is a non-negotiable that you must fix and what are things can you blow off and what are things you don't understand about that
Uh,
carburetor thing, you're not really interested in that, and like what things do you filter out of your ability to actually hear the truth, what's wrong with your car. So I think that there's a little bit of that happens as well because somebody could tell you, but sometimes if you're not ready to hear the thing,
that's
don't
true.
fully receive the thing. Like how often does your mom tell you something when you're growing up and you're just like, ah, okay, forget it, mom. It's my mom. Even though maybe a decade later you're like, oh my God, she was right. And so it's
Yep.
like, how much are we shielding ourselves from the thing and creating this reality around what we want to hear and what we're ready to receive
Which is so
as it relates.
hard because, yeah, if you're not ready to start working on it and you're not ready to receive and acknowledge and all the things, then I don't know. That's how people end up going their whole lives without finding that freedom.
It's the truth.
Mm.
And during that process of not finding that freedom, then they get sicker and sicker and they live a more diminished life. And then their relationships suffer and their quality of life suffers, and it's all avoidable if we're just willing to be open to feeling all the feels.
Mm. Yeah, which is hard. I've found with myself that a lot of my anger stemmed from fear. So, doing that deep dive into that, then I'm just like, oh, good Lord, the amount of fear that I have harbored inside of me is it's scary because I just was like, no, I'm just angry. I'm mad. I'm like mad at the universe. I'm mad at whatever. But then it's, but why? And it always boiled down to fear.
And sometimes it's safer for some women to express anger than it is to express their fear.
Mm,
Like it's a safety mechanism in some ways because it's safer for us to feel anger than it is for us to fully feel all the fear
why
that
is
they
that, do
have.
you think?
Because I think that's just a natural human thing that none of us want to face fear. I think we often spend our whole life avoiding anything that's fearful. We
Yeah.
don't have practice doing. What about, let's say, many generations ago, where we would actually have initiations, like for young women and young boys to go out into nature or learn to do something that they absolutely have to be alone with themselves and they have to face their fear and build this trust and resilience from within
Mm,
and learn to hone a relationship with that part of themselves, because I don't think it's possible to go through life without facing fear. But what we do is we block it off, we bypass it, or we just stop dead in front of it and refuse to go any further. But like the only way out is through.
yeah,
And so I think, and then I also think too, like in our culture today, especially, this is building on this whole idea, like everybody is afraid of everything, and all of our society is built on this like
on fear.
structure of fear. And then the pandemic didn't do us any favors.
Mm,
It relates to like a collective fear
yeah,
and how we can all collectively feel that vibration of fear everywhere we go. And
yeah.
then you look at the news cycle and the state of the world today, it's like fear sells.
That's how the
And
media works and stuff, right? Because people, when they were instilling fear in everybody, like they get more, everybody's, oh my God, I have to watch this because I got to know what's going on because I've got to, that's going to make me less fearful and because I got to know. And then it just spirals.
yeah, and you know what I think is interesting that kind of gets lost in this conversation around fear and confronting fear is what's on the other side of that. And
Mm,
on the other side of confronting your fears and facing them, even if you start small, is expansion, is freedom,
mm,
is liberation. And the feeling of that is like a feeling of the broadest range of human emotions. That is the most fulfilling
mhm,
and it is the most amazing. And it's like we're robbing ourselves of these bigger, more expansive feelings of the range of human
mm,
emotions and the range of human experience by shutting down in the face of fear, that we don't recognize that there's a lot to be gained by going through the actual process of feeling the fear,
yeah.
and that we can actually build our tolerance for fear, whether that's
Mm,
starting very small in very small ways, but it's just like any other muscle. And I guess maybe I have a higher tolerance for fear. You don't open restaurants and all that stuff if you're afraid. Although
right.
there's probably a lot of people who do and are afraid and all of that, but I have a higher tolerance for fear. But that doesn't mean I don't feel fear, just like
Right.
anybody else.
And then going back to like our busy lives too, I have found about myself recently that when I'm like at home and doing my normal routine and working and all the things, it's so easy to distract myself from feeling all those feels, right? And processing and everything. And my husband and I love to travel. So like recently we went on a 3 week trip and once everything got quiet, I was like, what the fuck is happening? Like, here I thought, I've been processing this whole time. I'm healing, I'm working on it, I'm doing the journaling, I'm doing therapy, I'm doing all the things. And then I went on this trip and I was like, oh dear God, now I'm just gonna cry every day. So it was forced processing, which I thought was very interesting because I think that if you don't give yourself that time like that, because a lot of people in society do not, they just keep turning the hamster wheel, then yeah, then you have the illnesses and you're not living your best life.
Yeah, you touch on something I think is so important because we all feel like we have to force and do. And yeah, we don't ever allow ourselves to just stop and feel all that is and be with all that is that comes up. And just that simple process by itself is incredibly transformative.
Yes,
And
it was
it's
hella hard at
hard.
first.
It is hella hard. It is so hella hard.
Yeah.
Yeah, but and then it gives you like a greater appreciation when you look at other people though who keep themselves so busy
Yeah.
that they actually don't feel life.
Mm-hmm.
And they are cruising through all of the beautiful layers of reality and the
Yeah.
layers of living just to continue to be busy. And busyness is a form of bypass.
Mm.
And it's a form of, yeah, it's a form of bypassing your pain or your fears or your concerns or whatever it is that you're hiding from. So you just keep yourself incredibly busy so that you don't have to feel any of that.
Yeah. It is amazing to
Yeah.
me though when I thought I was processing and I thought I'm like, oh yeah, I'm busy, but I'm like, I'm doing the things. And I was not doing the things. How do you
Yeah.
recommend in this world that we live in for people to start to slow down and feel the feels?
First of all, it has to come with this recognition from deep within, not because you and I are suggesting it's the thing to do,
Right.
but because it lands with them somewhere
Yes.
else. It doesn't land in their head like, oh, this mental thing, like another thing I have to do. It
Mm.
lands in their body as like a truth. It lands in them in a way that they can't avoid knowing that we're right. It's
Yes.
not because that's what I like, that's what I would do too. And what you shared is like, we think we're doing all the things. And the key word is think. We think
Mm.
we're doing all the things, but our body is craving something different entirely while we're
Mhm.
busy thinking we're doing all the journaling and all the manifesting and all the gratitude and or whatever that looks like, or talk therapy or whatever. There's so many different modalities. But I think it's really about, as you're listening, as whomever listens to our conversation, that they pay attention to what sensations are happening in their body as they hear us chatting about these dynamics and separating, like, where does that thought come from? This is what I say to my friends a lot, like, where does that belief come from, that thought, that thing you just said? Does that come from your mind or does that come from your body? And like a lot of times, if we really sit with things, like you and I could probably both name a whole bunch of things where in our past where it's just something just lands
Mhm.
within you and
Mhm.
it's, I get that,
Yeah.
that that makes sense. And that's different from like a, oh my God, something else I need to do. When it's, this is something that has to land deep within you as a truth that is an important aspect of the healing process that can't really be bypassed.
Yeah.
It has to only be experienced in all of its facets of human experience.
Yeah. Explain the human experience for people who maybe don't haven't heard that
I
term before.
think that we are meant to experience every range of emotions. Like emotion just stands for energy in motion. And
Mm.
so emotions will just flow through us. They're not part of us. They're not our identity. They're not who we are. They are just a vibration, an energetic vibration that moves through our body, that then we feel that energetic vibration within us. And then we attach a label to it and call that mad and call that sad and call that anxiety. And then we attach a story to that emotion. Oh, I'm always anxious. I am an anxious person. And then from that identity that we create around us being an anxious person, then we make all sorts of stories about our anxiety. And then we create all these decisions based upon us being anxious people. When, what if none of that's true? What if we're just meant to feel the energetic vibration of anxiety passing through our body and we actually are not anxiety? It's just an energetic vibration that passes through our body that we can go, wow, that feels like anxiety, but I am not anxious. But
Mm.
I am feeling this energetic vibration of an- anxiousness.
Mhm.
But that doesn't mean that I am an anxious person.
Mhm.
It's just this sensation that I'm feeling as a result of, let's say, a circumstance or whatever it is that instigated that feeling.
Yeah.
And so I think that we are feeling sensing beings and we're supposed to feel everything. That's we do. We are feeling sensing beings.
Yeah.
And instead, we shut ourselves off and feel like we can control what we actually feel. And we can
Mm.
shut out what we're allowed to feel and allow in other things that we feel are acceptable to feel and create this control around that. But what if you're not supposed to control any of that?
Mhm.
What if it's just a matter of actually learning how to build the capacity to hold all that is?
Yeah.
And the strength that comes from that alone, of holding everything that comes through you and recognizing you are an infinitely capable being. And this is what we're designed to do. We're designed to feel all of these range of energetic frequencies, but that doesn't need to identify us
Hmm.
as much as it's just how we're supposed to feel and move through life is feeling all the feels.
Yeah, the labels, I've been finding that's been coming up quite frequently now. I just did an interview recently with a girl about ADHD and ADD and all the neurodivergent stuff. And she very much was like, it doesn't really matter if you have the diagnosis or not. If you have XYZ problems, let me help you figure out how to get through those problems instead of attaching that label specifically to it and just trying to like make your life easier with the way that things resonate with you. So I imagine it's the same thing.
Yeah, but what you just hit on that I think is really powerful is like this whole idea of being in alignment and knowing our
Mhm.
truth and knowing ourselves. Because
Mm.
especially in today's era, it's so identity politics driven, right? Everybody has a micro identity. They identify as a million different things. And I think that they don't really know who they are and
Mm.
they don't know their truth.
Mm.
And I think that if they did, you don't have any need to create a story around an identity or create a story around an emotional state because you know yourself.
Mm.
You are more than the emotion that you feel. You are more than the sensations of ADD or ADHD or whatever. Like you are so much more than that. You are an infinite being full of infinite potential. And, but instead, we diminish, and back to the contraction, we diminish our existence
Mm.
by creating these micro kind of experiences around these identities and things like that when none of that is who we really are. We're so much more vast than that.
And we only get one life to do all of this,
Yes,
right?
you're
That we think
exactly right.
anyways.
Yeah, exactly.
So I don't know, that's been my thing lately too, is like you only get to do this once. Do you want to be miserable the entire time? I went through infertility for 10 years. And so I don't know, I finally got to the point where I was like, I don't want to be sad and angry anymore. I'm tired of feeling because I that was all consuming my entire life. And I'm like pushing 40 now, and I'm like, I don't want to live the rest of the next 40 years like that.
Yes.
Yeah. But some
Yeah,
do.
that's so beautiful too, because look at all the constriction
Mm.
that was in
Mhm.
that experience that you were just sharing,
So,
right? There's
yeah.
a bunch of tightness and constriction and anger and frustration and then always trying to find the solutions
Mm.
and then anger about the solutions and cycling through these mental emotions in the solutions that are available and how much they cost, what the efficacy rate is
Yeah. Yeah.
and like how much of that is constriction.
So much, all of it. And that's how I
Uh,
felt about the last 10 years of my life. I'm like, oh my God, 10 prime years of my life, too, from 28 to 37. Come on. Not that I feel like I wasted that time because there was a goal and I was doing all the things. It emotionally was not great. Yeah. And probably the darkest 10 years of my life. And then, yeah. You're talking about like people knowing their truth and finding themselves like, how would someone start recognizing that if they were not believing in themselves and having the self-worth and stuff?
yeah, I think that's such a valuable thing because I think that's where we all are at right now in a lot of ways is learning to come back to ourselves and to find
Mhm.
ourselves and to recognize that we are so much more than all of these things that you and I have been talking about.
Yep.
And I think it does start with, once again, back to that sense of like your truth in that moment of, is this landing within you as, oh, actually, there's something that these ladies are talking about that is interesting to me. There's something that these women are talking about that is ringing true in my body. There is something that has sparked my curiosity. And once you have that, then the door to change is open. And then you just have to be in a place of just what you said in your realization after your chapter of your life is like this realization of, I don't want to do this. I can't live like this anymore.
Mhm.
And but if somebody had told you through that, that you shouldn't live like this anymore, you would not have been able to receive that.
No, definitely not.
If anybody
In
told
fact,
you at any time earlier than when you recognized it, it would never have landed.
in
Do you think
fact,
it would have?
yeah, my husband at one point, he was like, in the very beginning, he was like, I was just devastated. And he was like, it's not so bad. We have a great relationship. We have a great life together. We love each other. If we don't have kids, it's going to be okay. And I was like, fuck you. It is not. That is not my life. That
Right.
is not how I perceived it. So,
Totally.
and
100%.
now I'm all right. That's not so bad. He was right. So,
Yeah, because you were finally ready. You're finally ready to receive the truth of what that meant for you and the truth of what that means for your path in life and at least where you are in this moment. And I think this is the difference between change and transformation is that like transformation is a deep internal process born from you starting to come into contact with this idea that you are greater than, you are infinite, you are more than all of these other things that society has prescribed to you. And that your experience in this world is exactly as you said, is meant to be more multidimensional and richer and more vast and more multifaceted. But until you get out of your head around that and actually get into your body and feeling the truth of that, in whatever that way that lands for you, it could land as just a curiosity. It could
mhm.
land as I want to maybe share this podcast with a friend of mine.
Yeah.
It could land in any number of different ways that you have some inner reflection or you're sitting in the car listening to us and you're like, huh, wow, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Then all of a sudden you have opened the door within your by your curiosity to explore more deeply, and that's coming from a place of authenticity and truth. That's not coming
Mm.
from this I follow everything that Tawny Palm says, and so I'm going to do everything that she says, which
Yeah.
is like a mental construct, and it's not
Yeah.
born in like the truth of your body and your deeper inner knowing, which we all have, by the way. We just
Yeah.
forget we do,
And
or
sometimes
we
just
aren't
need,
in touch with that.
yeah, and we just need help getting in touch with that. And then,
Yes,
yeah,
yes.
instead of, yeah, I mean, there's the world of self-help and stuff is so big out there. And now everybody's doing coaching programs and things like that, that can all be very overwhelming too. And definitely same thing, do something that resonates with you, that sticks with you, that you're like, oh, that sounds interesting. I want to do that.
What I love about what you just said, though, is this difference between I'm hoping, I'd like to reframe this. I'm hoping as somebody's listening to us, and you just said this, like all of these gurus and doctors and like all these people who want to fix you and all of that stuff. And you're the one who said it, like it's another thing to do. And what is the feeling that comes from that expectation, frustration, like another thing to do, another thing to add to your to-do list? And
Another
actually
thing to
sounds
pay
like
for.
another thing to pay for, another thing to stress about because you're
Mhm.
not doing all the things. And that feels constricting.
Mm,
Whereas this other part that you and I are talking about, where you have curiosity and you have intrigue and you're
mm,
like, huh, and you take pause, that feels in my body like more expansion.
mm,
That feels like permission. That
yeah.
feels like an interesting thing to explore and
Mhm.
something that's interesting to explore or a curiosity or is landing in your body in a different way that makes you curious. Curiosity is expansion. Curiosity isn't restriction and constriction.
Yeah.
Curiosity feels, oh, let's explore that, you know?
Let's look into that a little bit more. Let's learn more.
And that comes from within your body. That doesn't come from within your mind.
Yeah, it has taken me a long time to listen to my body for sure. I think also when you're in your 20s and things like that, that none of that's on your radar because you're just living life.
100%.
And I feel like it wasn't until like hard shit started happening that I'm like, okay, I gotta pay attention. And it's been very interesting. I think it's been very enlightening. So if anybody's like listening, who's, what are these two talking about listening to their bodies? I don't know what they're talking about. It truly is. Just sit with it. I was writing an email the other day and it was for work. And I just was writing this email and I just realized how much I was sweating.
Yeah.
So something as simple as that, I was like, oh, wow, that one really stressed me out. So just from that simple thing. So
Yeah, I think that we can, I think that this is a lot of where we are right now. I think that the zeitgeist, especially around like alternative healing modalities, is really starting to come around to this idea that we really do hold a lot in our bodies. And as a consequence, like that's what our bodies are here for. That's the beautiful container that holds all of the vastness of every experience we've ever had. But to keep ourselves safe, we disconnect from our body.
Mm,
And we don't have practices that recognize that we should be more connected to our body.
yeah.
And there are many practices, and more people are starting to recognize, as a result of being disconnected from our body, we're also disconnected from a lot of emotions and traumas that are stored in our body.
Mm,
And then what ends up happening is that those constrictions and restrictions within that are kept in your body and not allowed out or
mm,
seen or expressed or felt turn into disease.
mm,
And it could be cancer. It could be like there's The Body Keeps the Score, Gabor Mate, Carolyn Myss. There's a lot of authors and there's a lot of researchers who are connecting like various personality traits and suppressed emotions with particular diseases. And so there is a very vast body of work that shows that certain cancers and all sorts of different diseases manifest as a result of suppressed emotions
mm,
that are not seen and not felt. And they're suppressed because they're these suppressed traumas and sensations that you keep trapped in your body because you are so disconnected from your body.
mm,
And so I think that we're starting to see more and more awareness being paid to like how important this is. It's not this woo woo thing, actually.
mm,
It feels maybe a little woo woo to some people who are listening to us, but I mark my words, in the coming years, we're going to see that it's a primary way of healing and not necessarily this fringe thing. It's really potentially the first line of the healing process is getting in touch with our body, conditioning ourselves to feel all of our emotions, releasing past traumas that have been
mhm.
suppressed. And then we become more united with ourselves and more whole and feeling in the human expression of ourselves.
Therapy and all this talking about all this stuff is becoming more and more. Almost everybody you talk to is in therapy now. So
Yeah.
it's not like we were talking about earlier with my grandparents and stuff like that, where it was just like, no, you are the weirdo of the family if you have to go to therapy and there's something really wrong with you. And now it's no, everybody should be talking through their stuff and not necessarily therapy, whatever your modality is for you. But I'm like therapy specific just sticks in my head as like used to be frowned, shamed and now is more widely accepted. And like my health insurance company or my health insurance plan started covering it for me too. So that's a huge jump forward too, because it's also very expensive and not as accessible to people and stuff. And then I think going back to the food thing too, and that I think that's a really good way to start paying attention to your body is how certain foods make you feel. And it would be nice to see America start to change their ways with food, which there's some things starting to happen with that, but I also think it's very difficult mass producing. I don't know if you've noticed that being in a different country, like whenever I go on vacation to a different country that's significantly smaller, the food seems cleaner, better sourced, all this stuff because they don't have to mass produce and they don't have the resources to do the things to the food that we do with the GMOs and everything. So, have you found that with your traveling?
Yeah, for sure. And I want to add to that. I think you're absolutely right. But I also feel like there isn't the big commercial marketing arm of things.
Mm,
Not everybody
yeah.
has a television and they're in the
Oh,
grocery stores with all of the packaging and all of the branding
yeah,
and
you go to the
all of
market.
that. You go to the market and like you get real food. It's just not like I was here last Christmas and I was shocked at how I'm in Costa Rica. So I'm in the middle of the jungle. But it's Christmas, and this is a largely a Catholic country. So there is a serious reverence for this holiday tradition, but it's not Santa Claus. And there isn't like Christmas trees everywhere, and they're not celebrating Christmas like right after Halloween like they were. I was just in the States in the month of October, and I was there for Halloween and then the first week of November. And I just got back a couple of days ago, but and I was like, there was already Christmas lights up and there was already
Yep.
Christmas music playing in every place. So like you don't have this big capitalist commercialistic arm of things that runs this entire idea of the things that you need that you don't actually need. So I think that that's a big component of things too,
Yeah.
is the marketing and the capitalistic kind of tendencies to.
Yeah.
placate your that feeling inside that you need to do something, and so you
Yeah.
need to buy something or
Yeah.
whatever.
Yeah, for sure. I can
Food
even
just isn't what.
go ahead. You go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, yeah, food is seen as a celebration and a way to bring community together in these kind of, let's say, holiday experiences, and not necessarily something that it's Dia de los Muertos, it's not Halloween and like
Yeah.
candy and all of that kind of stuff. It's a different connection to community and celebrating the holidays.
Yeah. I love that.
Yeah,
That's what I love about
yeah,
traveling, though. Like, you get to see all those the way that different cultures celebrate different things and do different things. And then you also realize that a lot of those people in those countries are just people living their everyday life and trying to support their families and their kids and give
yeah,
their kids a better life than they had and so on. It's my favorite
yeah.
thing.
Yeah, me too. It's like real grounded. It's real grounded in like how people like are supposed to live and supposed to enjoy things and pass the time and be with community and family and show their love and
It is hard when I
support.
come back to the US though, and I'm like, I get caught back up in it every single time because it's all around me. I'll go into a different country and I'm like, oh, okay. I'm gonna be better when I go back home. And then I'm like, you just end up in the cycle because that's our culture.
Yeah, it is really hard to stay grounded for sure.
Yeah.
I recognized that when I was back for the whole month of October and I had been gone for a long time. And so, like, the shift in the difference in the vibration and the priorities, and then just I'm like in this very small town and remote in the jungle. And then going back to being in like the chaotic everything and all the people and all of the competing interests and all of that, I was like, wow,
Like
this is
reverse culture shock.
yeah, reverse culture shock. I definitely huge part of me really prefers the simplicity of being in the jungle.
Yeah, I love that.
It's better for
So,
my health.
yes. Yeah, and to be out of the like city pollution and all the things too. I'm sure the air is clear in there.
Yeah, much.
Okay, so you're doing all this work now with your nervous system. What does that look like for you now? Are you working one-on-one with people, or what does that look like right now?
Yeah, I'm a holistic transformation guide and I help people get in touch with like their true healing potential and empower their own health awakening. And you work with me for in a mentorship program and work through a bunch of the things that we talked about.
Mhm.
And because you authentically really want to have the full range of human experience and you want to regulate your nervous system. And you recognize too that in learning how to do these things, they will affect your health in more profound ways than you could ever imagine. And you will live in the fullness of your human experience.
Mm.
And you won't be robbed of like the opportunity to live the fullest, best, only
Mm.
life that you have. And so I think yeah, so it's the greatest honor for
Mm.
me.
So how, if somebody wants to work with you, I will link your website in the show notes. Are you on social media and stuff like that?
Yeah, so you can find me. My website is my name, ChristineRuch.com. It's Ruch. And then I also have a Substack where I talk about the healing path and all of the ways that we heal. And there's a link to my Substack on my website. You can also email me, of course. You can schedule a call with me, and I do that for free and offer my time generously so that you can explore any number of these different elements and nuances of the healing process if you're intrigued. And then, of course, I'm on Instagram as well. Generally, I am not super like all about the posting and stuff like
Yeah.
that, but I have often links and a lot of collaboration with the podcasts that I've been on.
Yeah,
So,
that's a good way to do it. I frequently am like, are you on Instagram? Because that's pretty much where I'm at. So I'm gonna post the clips and stuff from this on there.
yeah, yeah. So yeah, that's mostly what my Instagram feed is, just
Yeah,
mostly the clips and the reels
yeah.
from the previous podcasts that I'm on.
Amazing. Thank you so much for coming on here and having this conversation with me. This has been amazing. I've really enjoyed it.
I loved how we were able to go into all of these nuances around
Mm.
feeling your feelings and the
Yeah.
ramifications of not feeling all the feelings.
Yeah. What parting words do you have for my listeners?
I just want to invite people to sit with the truth of everything that we were sharing and recognize within them how much they have disempowered themselves by not being fully in touch with their own truth, or disempowered themselves by believing in all of these external healing modalities that haven't actually gotten them much closer to authentic true health,
Mm.
and how much they actually believe it is within themselves to affect change, and how much they desire to actually heal themselves.
I love that. Thank you so
Yeah.
much.
Yeah,
This has
thank
been,
you.
yeah, this has been so great. And I hope that somebody listening, some of this stuff really resonated with somebody listeing, and maybe they'll reach
Me
out.
too. Yeah, that would be wonderful.
Yeah. All right. Thanks, Christine, for coming on. And thank
Yeah,
you.
thanks, Tani. I really appreciate the opportunity.
Yeah. And thanks, everybody, for listening. We'll see you on the next episode.